What's going on? Is there directions on the outside of the box before stop shaking it? What if it's breakable?
Right, this is perfect. I didn't even tell her I was going to ask her. Did you hear that? So Maria, if you couldn't tell, is very much the C of our group, right? She's someone that would really just want to have the instructions. Michelle is shaking the box, Kristen's ripping it open, and Maria's like, where are the instructions? I just want right? What do we think the S is doing? Felicia is our S, if anyone has Felicia. What do we think the S is thinking? Right, opening it together, very good, thank you so much, right? They're like, okay, this is a great opportunity for all of us to get along. We're gonna work together, we're gonna figure out what's in the box, and still the C is thinking, just get the directions, and the S is realizing, wow, Maria really wants the instructions, I'm gonna go get those instructions and give them to Maria. And Kristen is still wondering why we are still talking about what is in the box and why the box isn't open. And the I is now taking pieces out of the box, turning into swords, and playing with it. Thinking this is going to be so much fun. Forget how much time we need. Forget what else is going on the rest of the day. We are going to have so much fun with this box, right? Turns out what's in that box is a tent, right? Well, that sounds fun. The eyes are really excited once they find out it's a tent. They're thinking we're going to sleep over, forget the homework that we have to do, forget anything else we have to do. This is going to be so much fun. The S is thinking, okay, if we're going to have a sleepover, where is everyone going to sleep? How's this going to work? How much time do we have to get food? How much money do we have to get food? The C is still thinking, if I can get those instructions, we could really figure out what's going on here. But I still, now the I has the instruction, is turning into a paper airplane, and I just want the instructions, right? The D is getting increasingly stressed because we're still not getting anything done, right? So, D, we see, get it done, bottom line. I, get approval, make it fun. Get along, work together, those S's, right? Just like the scenario we talked about. And then that C is thinking, get it right, facts and figures. So, we talked about why this is important for you all and the leaders. Besides the fact that I wanted to be here tonight to talk to you about this, is I love it and I think it's so much fun. The reason we're telling you about it is because you as a leader need to figure out what other people want from this, right? So people that are high Ds, they want others to be direct, straightforward, over results. I's want others to be friendly and recognize their contributions. S's want others to be relaxed, agreeable, cooperative. And those C's want others to minimize socializing, right? They just want the instruction. And give details and value accuracy. So, if I am someone who is a leader and I know I have a C in my group, what am I going to do to help them be comfortable? Let's give that box example again. What can I do as a leader to make sure that C is comfortable? Yes, please.
I'm sure to say, like, just give them instructions.
Right, it's not that hard. It seems very simple, right? But if you're not understanding, you're not paying attention to see, like, someone give Maria the darn directions, how simple is that? It didn't take that long, but it's something you can easily do. What about the S's? What can we do as a leader to make those S's comfortable? You're all so smart. What can we do to make the S's comfortable?
Maybe have S give the instructions to the C to solve problems and feel included.
That was good. Everyone here, what you said, can you say that louder?
Yeah, have the S give the instructions to the C to have them be a part.
Now this is high level stuff coming out of here, right? So what that is you're realizing not only that was twofold, not only yes, the C needs the directions, but as a leader I'm going to say, I'm going to, let's say Olivia's an S, I'm going to give Olivia the instructions to give to Maria, because she is going to be so happy that she was the one to help. That was really good. Nah, you're kidding. What about the I's? If I'm a leader and I know the I in this project, what am I going to do to make sure that I is having a good time? Very good. Please, Pegs.
You could, like, let them be the ones that get everyone together and get them, like...
Absolutely. Have them come up with a song, you know? This is going to be so much fun. Let's create a song about this box. That I's going to be like, sure, I would love to do that. What about the D's? What are you going to do to make sure the D is comfortable? What do you do to make sure that D is comfortable in this instance?
Let them give the orders, make them do
Right.
the captain.
If you're someone who's a leader, you could say, hey, these D's are going to want to feel like they're getting stuff going here, right? So you might say, hey, D, hey, Kristen, why don't you tell us what to do? And Kristen's going to be like, great, open the box, right? And we're going to get going that way. All right, so we talked about flexing. So the I is thinking about who, the S is thinking about how, the C is thinking about why, and the D is thinking about what. So what do these two have in common, the D and the I? People that are D's and I's are, generally speaking, they're like things to be more fast-paced. They like things when they're more assertive, dynamic, and bold, right? So you can think about these as teammates, that they're the people that don't want to have someone tell them how they're feeling. They just want, what's the answer? What am I doing wrong? Let's get things going, right? And then the I's and the S's, what they have in common is that they are accepting, they're people-focused, they're empathizing, and they're receptive, agreeable. These I's are going to be people-focused. These I's and these S's are going to be concerned about how people are feeling. Then the C's and the S's, what they have in common is they're both thoughtful, moderate paced, calm, methodical, and careful, right? So these two styles are going to have an easy time getting together in a lot of projects. And then the D's and the C's, what they have in common is that they're logic focused, right? They can be skeptical, they can be challenged. What do we think is a problem sometimes with D's and S's, especially if we're thinking about conflict? Why do you think a D is going to get annoyed with an S? Yes, please.
Because S is like taking their time and thinking it through, and D just wants to get it done.
Beautiful, I couldn't have said that better myself. Exactly. Those D's, again, they're fast-paced. If we're looking what's on the top there, the opposite of what the S, the furthest away, is that they are going to be fast, right? Fast-paced. We talked about S's don't like change a lot. It's that same thing. The D's are ready to go. They've already moved on from the change, and they're ready to work through it, right? So it's really important to know that if you are someone who's a D, you've got to really flex, and you've got to really be thinking about how the S is, because that's going to be really kind of far off on the spectrum of how you're going to see things through your style. What about the I's and the C's? Why do we think, if we put the arrow the other way, why do we think a C could be annoyed with an I? Especially if we're thinking about that box example that I gave. Why could a C be annoyed with an I? Maria's never annoyed. This is tough. Yeah.
Because the C kind of just wants to follow the directions and like do everything right, whereas an I kind of wants to have more fun with it.
Absolutely, right? Again, the C is trying to get the instructions so they can get the tent so they can get out of there and go, right? They have other things to do. Whereas the I is having so much fun, they don't care about the timeline, they just want to have a blast. So that C could easily get annoyed sometimes with that I. All right. Do we feel like we have a good idea of what we're talking about here? Wonderful. No one's going to say no. Let's go on to your assessment. So please open up your assessment. All right, so we're going to go through this now. Kristen, I'm not sure, I don't know if you mentioned that we're going to be having the individual meetings that we're going to do.
Yes, I am.
So, did I just do it?
No, that's okay.
Okay, so what's important about this to know is there's a lot of information in here. What is there in here? You guys are, what, come on. All right, everyone stand up, everyone stand up. Do 2 circles in the other way. I know, come on, you can do it. Come on, Anthony. Very good, thank you, thank you. I don't know why you're not having as much fun as I am. All right, there is a lot of information in here. As Maria said, this is something that we spend hours going through, okay? We're trying to get through it quickly, but this is something we want you to go through with your coaches. This is something that we're going to talk to you from a leadership standpoint. We need to make sure that you can go through it. As we've just learned, some people are going to fly through this, and other people are going to really need their time to digest this. The first page you're going to see, I want you to go to the bottom of page 2, that bottom right corner. For those of you who didn't spend the time to go through this, this is what your style is. Looking really, what I want to focus on is that natural style, okay? So a graph you'll see there is typically people have 2 styles that are going to be higher than the others, right? If you are people that are extreme in 2, then you're probably some of the ones that were laughing, thinking about how you are, because these are really going to apply to some of you. Those that are more leveled off, we'll talk about how that plays out. But the introduction on that first page, if we go back to page 1, really there's 4 areas we're digesting here. How you respond to problems and challenges, your influence, how you influence others, how you respond to the pace of environment, and how you respond to rules and procedures set by others, okay? And then the point I want to make on this page is that you want to improve accuracy, feel free to make notes and edits. So this is, again, things that you're going to have to really digest. All right, so the next page, the general characteristics. So page 2, I want each of you to take a second and read this to yourselves, not out loud. Take a second and read these general characteristics, okay? raise your hand if your primary style is an I. Ooh, all these fun people. All right, raise your hand if your primary style is a D. Oh my God.
Raise it higher, don't be ashamed of those.
Yeah, that's right, Kristen, cheer 'em on. Wow, that is surprising. Okay, and what about, raise your hand if your primary is an S, our golden retrievers. Oh, you guys are so nice. And then what about the C's? Raise your hand if you're a C. Wonderful, wonderful, getting a lot of things done, congratulations. Okay, so we're gonna go to the next page here. So we're now, if you didn't read the draft part, you need to go back to that. But now we're on page 4. So value to the organization. I joke that this page, although very simple, is something that will be really helpful in future interviews for you, right? This on here is talking about why you are valuable. Okay, this is really, really helpful because these are things you probably know about yourself and it probably resonates quite a bit, but really easy bullet points. These are really positive, nice things, right? That's wonderful. Okay. So raise your hand if you think at least 3 things on here are something that very much explain you. Raise your hand high. Okay. Who can give me an example of one of these things that is very true for them? Yes, please.
A sense of urgency.
Okay, and how does that play out for you?
I'm just like, whenever I get a task, I have to get done really quickly.
That sounds great in an interview, doesn't it? Absolutely. And why do you think it's important for maybe your teammates, again, as a leader, for your teammates to know that about you?
Just so that they can recognize that like some of their actions might be a little faster than they like to do so.
Absolutely. And why is that important for you to know about yourself?
That I can't push some of the players to make them act faster than they usually do.
Just because that's the way that your behavior runs itself. Very good. Someone else with an example of a bullet point on that resonates with them? Nia, please.
Negotiates conflicts. I feel like between my friends and a lot of people like conflict and to make sure it's okay how to.
So sometimes if there are really big conflicts going on, that's probably really stressful for you, right? All right, next page. Page 5. So these are ways in which you prefer to be communicated with. This is really important. As leaders, you're going to be communicating on a lot of different levels. Of course, you're going to have a coach or someone else that's in a supervisor role for you that's going to be communicating with you, but it's also really important for you to understand how you are, because guess what? If you're maybe not getting the communication that's important to know. Raise your hand if you think on here this is something that really pertains to you, something that really resonates with you. At least 2 or 3 bullet points on here. Raise your hand, raise your hand. Okay, Becky, give me an example, one that really resonates with you.
Read the body language for approval of the approval.
Okay, and what do you mean by that? Or why do you think so? Your teammate's laughing.
I think that you can tell if I'm like in the morning, if you practice, you can tell I don't want to speak.
Okay, so Nicole, as her teammate, how do you think that plays out if you're a leader and trying to help get Becky motivated for practice?
Well, I'd say that if I were to notice his body language as not as great or not disapproval in the morning, I would go talk to her, say, oh, let's get ready to kill this practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think sometimes you probably just leave her alone, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to mess with her sometimes, right? Wait for her to jump in a pool a little bit. What else? Give me an example of a bullet point that resonates for you here, please. Casey.
Be specific and leave nothing to chance.
Ooh, what's your primary style again?
I'm a C.
On a C. Okay, absolutely. Our Maria's. Okay. So what do you think this means for you?
I just like immediately think of like people asking for like rides and stuff and like giving times and everything. It's like come to me with something that I can take and like know right away.
So if I were to say
what-
like, hey
when
dude,
to
can you
do.
give me a ride? To you, that's like no information, right?
Right.
You need to know when, what does that look like,
When,
what
where.
color your shirt are you gonna be wearing, right? All that stuff.
So,
Absolutely. So you're someone probably in a group, you probably appreciated that we had all this stuff laid out for you, right? Stuff that you could actually read through and probably liked possibly that we sent it to you earlier so that if you wanted to read through it, you could, right? Okay, so why is that important to know if somebody is not that way for you as a leader?
because sometimes I can be a little dismissive when people don't give me like their piece beforehand.
Absolutely. That's why you just got your own scooter, right? So you don't have to mess with other people. Smart, very smart. All right. Let's go to the next page now, page 6. I'm doing on time, 10 minutes. Okay, so this is a little bit more fun. This is the way that you do not want to be communicated with, okay? So we can all think of probably examples and ways how this plays out on your team. Give me an example for one of these bullet points that resonates with you. Yes, please, Pat.
Ramble,
Okay, give me an example of that.
because if I don't like what you're rambling about, then I'm probably gonna switch the conversation to something that I wanna ramble about.
Okay,
But if I do like what you're rambling about, then we're gonna get absolutely nowhere.
that's very good.
Rambling.
Right, which again, knowing that about yourself helps you how?
Just lets me know how to guide a conversation.
And being self-aware, understanding that maybe you are rambling, so you can stop yourself. Wonderful. What's another example of someone on here, something that made you smile and think, that is exactly me? Abby, you're laughing.
I think mine is be curt, cold, or tight-lipped.
Okay, so why does
'Cause
that
I
make
think that goes along with body language, like, if you don't wanna talk to me, I'm not gonna wanna talk to you.
Right, you're not gonna be the first one to have that
Yeah,
communication.
yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so how do you think this plays out with your coaches, right? I'm thinking a lot, I played soccer, I'm thinking about how some teammates really like to be someone that's yelled at, right? And some do not like that at all. How do you think this plays out with knowing how you want to be communicated with? How do you think as a leader on your team, this is important for you to know when pertaining to your coaches? Yes, please.
Kind of like knowing how people on your team prefer to be like communicated with or coached, and like letting your coach know if somebody like really hates, like when they're mad at them or something.
Absolutely. So, and back to, I think, someone who's really detail-oriented, this is something that Kristen has done with our staff. If you're someone who really likes to have the details, and you know you're gonna have a staff meeting at 8:30 in the morning on Tuesday, what do you think I might do to support that from a communication standpoint, to support that person?
Well, as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
you mean just like when you tell?
Yeah, from a communication standpoint, if I know I'm Spence and I'm gonna be communicating with you and we're gonna have a meeting, what might be a good way to put you at ease for that meeting?
Tell me like at least a couple days in advance so I can get my stuff done that we're
Very
doing
good.
at that time. Let me know when, where, and like dress if that is like something.
Isn't that funny? I'm smiling because I wouldn't think about any of those things.
Whether I can just go for the spots or whether I need to be like ready for
Right.
practice or something like that.
Absolutely. So now, as someone who's the exact opposite of that, I'd be like, just tell me where to go, what time, do you wanna talk about it now, like, when's, whatever, like, do you want lunch, right? I wouldn't even think about any of those things. So knowing someone, if I'm your coach, it's important because, again, in my example with Kristen is, you can send that staff meeting out ahead of time. I'm gonna see that the email came in, I'm gonna star it, know I gotta print it for tomorrow's meeting, but I'm probably not gonna look too much into it because I'm gonna be ready to go when it's staff time. But someone like you is gonna be able to see that and look through that, right? So when you're thinking about communicating with your teammates, knowing that is really important because guess what? If you are an I or you're someone who that detail isn't that important to you, it's not that hard as a leader. A lot of this is really simple. It's not that hard as a leader to take a second and put it in an email with some bullet points, with some more information so everyone's on the same page, right? All right, page 7. So communication tips. So these are suggestions on methods in which you will improve communication with others. So take a second and read through these. All right, and reading through these, which box do we think applies to those that are C? Our conscientious group, which box do you think? It's not in order of the picture as a quiz that we went through. Which one do we think is a C? The first one? Very good, it was easy because I read said the first one. Right? Which one do we think is the S? That steady person. So just to make sure we're putting this together. The bottom left. Okay, what about the D's? Top right, and then the I's. So this page is really good if you're someone who's really trying to figure out exactly what this looks like, when you're trying to think, how can I be a better communicator? How can I make sure I'm reaching my teammates, especially those that are the most different from me from a style standpoint? This is a really good page for that. Okay, page 8. Ideal environment. So this is, in this context, is the ideal work environment, okay? So this is context of, again, we're talking about your team and how you're a leader here, but this is also really important as you're thinking about internships, jobs, careers. Some of this is gonna be really self-explanatory and easy, but some of this is gonna be stuff that really makes sense when you're thinking about what you wanna do in the future, okay? What stands out to someone here on this list is bullet points? For an ideal work environment. Okay. You mind is it? Were you pointing to something? Yeah, please.
Freedom from control, some supervision details. I hate authority.
Right.
I hate somebody telling me what to do.
Absolutely. So that's going to be really important for you as you're thinking about careers and different things, because that's going to be, right? There's going to be some careers where that very much lends itself, and others where it doesn't. That's a really, really good example. And I love the self-awareness there. Who else? One more person volunteer for this page. Yes, please.
New products and new ideas to work on.
Okay, so what makes you smile about that?
I just like to be like in a fast-paced environment, that I'm never getting bored with working with other people.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you for that example. All right, page 9. All right, so we talked a little bit when we were going through this about how you are perceived by others. Some of this sometimes might seem a little harsh, but it is important that we're being self-aware, right? And so the self-perception, this is how we see ourselves, right? So the examples here are ways, Nicole, I have your thing that I'm going through here. So I can see yours on here for usually sees yourself as being. Those are some nice things, right? Good things. Now the next box we have, others may perceive in moderate situations, right? This might just be at practice. And then others in extreme circumstances. So this is usually meaning, we talked about fear, and why I tried to point out those fears is also if you're stressed and you're not at your best self, this is how people are going to perceive you. We have a lot of laughs, a lot of snickering. Yes, please. Kristen, how do we describe glib? Like, it's one of the answers they have here. So, yeah, so in this context it's saying, so I'm looking at Nicole's book. Moderate, it says self-promoting, glib, over-optimistic, unrealistic. So I think it just kind of
glib is kind of like, well, yeah, I'm right. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm the best.
Right. It's like overly confident, and you're laughing and smiling. Anthony, is that on your page? Oh. Thank you for asking that question. I love questions. Huh? Did you hear that? Okay.
This is based on your responses to questions, right? So it's a compliment.
So, thank you so much for asking this. So, this is how you perceive yourself. The top box is how you perceive yourself. The other one is how others may be perceiving you. In moderate, as an I, this might be hard to swallow, right? You want people to like you, you want people to think you're great. Some of these characteristics here are not so positive. But again, what's important to know is that on here it's talking about under moderate pressure, tension, stress, or fatigue. Again, you can all picture your teammates in the middle of a workout, right? When you are at your wit's end and you're throwing up because you're working so hard, that what are you going to be like in this situation, right? And then of course extreme, this is stressful. When you guys are losing, you're down, I'm playing soccer, but when you're down by 3 goals and you have a whole game left to play, how your behavioral is going to come out that way. Thank you for that, Anthony, that was wonderful. All right, page 10. So this goes back to the first group, the first one here under dominant, the first column we see here is solves problems and meets challenges. It's kind of how your response is to that. So, that, for example, one of the things here is if it's highlighted for mine that's competitive, that I solve problems and meet challenges by being competitive, decisive, and venturesome, right? The next column we see there is how you influence others. And then how the pace of your environment and response, we talked about how you like things to be fast-paced and stuff like that's important to know. And the last thing there is response to rules and procedures by others. Sebastian, what do you have for yours on that one? On the last column there. How you respond to rules and procedures. What are some of the words that are highlighted on page 10?
Firm,
Okay? That's the only one that's highlighted.
my whole dominance.
So you've got, it's big for you, okay, perfect. So can you read some words on that one that are highlighted?
Strong-willed, determined, competitive, decisive, venturesome, ambitious, striving.
Okay, and Lucas as his teammate, do you think those words successfully describe him? Wonderful. Okay, great. Again, there's tons of information to go through here today, but we have about 3 minutes. But what I want you to do is make sure you go through all of this on your own time, and again, we're gonna make sure that we meet with you to talk about these things. The last page I wanna get to though is on page 17 and 18, where you'll see that there's different things you can go through. That's stuff I want you to think about before you have your meetings with us on page 17 and 18. And then the very last page, okay? So page 22 and 23. On page 22, it's gonna explain this, the Success Insights wheel. This is important because this is gonna talk about, you saw how the grid lists 2 things. The grids list an adaptive style and a natural style. On the back side, you're gonna see how those play out. So on this wheel, on that very back page, you're gonna see how close those 2 are. If your two shapes, or one of them's a circle, one of them's a star, if they're in the same area, that means that your adaptive style and your natural style are gonna be very similar, right? So this means that you aren't adapting very much to your natural style. So when you're with your teammates and you're in these stressful situations, you're gonna be pretty much the same. If you see that they're a little more spread out, that means that you're probably flexing more than you maybe realize when you're in some of these situations with your team. Whether this is your coach, whether this is somebody that you're trying to work with on your team, whatever it was when you were going through this, right? Some of you that are first years, this might really play out because you're still trying to figure out where you are on the team, right? You're still trying to figure out how much of my natural self can I be, right? Do I want to go ahead and if I'm someone who's be really, really out there and influential, or am I someone who's kind of holding back because I want to make sure I'm not being too aggressive and people aren't perceiving me the wrong way? So again, we will talk more about this. Okay, questions? Questions about any of this? Yes, please, Kate. Listen up, please, we're almost done. Absolutely. So I want you to read that there's a little bit more information that we sped through, which is fine. But the circle and the star, on the bottom here, so you've got, the adaptive is the star and the circle is the natural. So again, the closer you are means how is pretty aligned in how you're working with your team and how you are in your natural step yourself. If we see those out, it means you're probably flexing a little bit more than you probably realize when you're with your team. Okay? Questions, comments, concerns? Pads?
Say you get teammates that you may or may not be like very close with.
Yeah.
And you don't know like where they may fit on here.
Sure.
How are you supposed to go about approaching them like and not trying to be wrong?
Absolutely. So you're saying if there's a teammate that you said you're not very close
Like
with?
say you're not super close to there's a first opportunity.
Sure.
And you want to approach them about a situation.
That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Do you think, can you picture what style you think maybe that person is that you're thinking of? If you're people reading?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
Not really.
Well, that's really important. So I think sometimes when you go through this, I want you to read through this again, but I really want you to try to think, and again, we're not trying to put people in boxes, but pay attention, right? You want to see if that's someone who is probably a little more reserved, and they're a little quiet. It's maybe someone who things are going way too fast-paced, or they're not task-oriented enough, and that's something that's maybe stressing them out. So really try to pay attention to that person, and again, if it's someone who wants to be relied on, ask them to, pick up something for you from the bags to get to practice, right? Find ways to bring them in so that they feel more a part of things. We do see a lot of times with first years that, again, they're not necessarily being their same true self because they're trying to figure out how they fit, right? So I think it's important to pay attention to those things, and I'd love to talk to you more about that. That's a great, great question.
And I would say, one thing I would add to that too is, you don't need to feel like you need to be analyzing your teammates to figure out what their personality is, and then I'm gonna act this way, this is a process, and so this is the very first part of that process. So you need to understand yourself first before you're able to understand and kind of help manage and lead other people. So, Jack, what I would say is the one thing you can do is get to know them, period, right? Like, I'm not trying to figure out your style or how you like to be communicated with or anything like that. I just want to know who you are. Like, what do you like? What do you do? Let's go hang out. Let's have lunch, something, right? So it's more about just knowing the person first, and then you can start to think about how you relate to them. So a couple things here. So we are going to encourage you to communicate with your coaches as we move through this process. That's a really important part of what we're doing. They picked you. They handpicked you to be part of this group because they see that you have these leadership capabilities in you and they want you to work on them. So we want you to talk about your DISC assessment with them, and we want you to say, like, what do you see? How do you, do you think this is me? And kind of talk through it with them a little bit. We are going to challenge you a little bit to think about your weaknesses based on this assessment and what we can do to kind of start developing some of those and turning those weaknesses into strengths. And so you'll see in part of your assessment there's an action plan. So it talks about it from a professional and personal development standpoint, and it's kind of career focused the way the questions are worded. Think about it within your teams, right? So change the context into your teams. And you're just gonna kind of take a couple notes. This will literally take a couple minutes. You can do it after school's over, after finals, all of that. Just look at it. Take a little bit of time, reflect on it. What do I think I wanna work on? Michelle mentioned we're gonna do some individual and or small group meetings where you're gonna come in and we're gonna talk specifically about your results and how you've seen that play out a little bit in your interactions with your coaches and your teammates and your team so far. So some of you have been through your whole competitive season already. Some of you are just getting started in that. So, where you're at in that regard might be a little bit different. But as we think about interactions with teams, we should all have some experience that's gonna help kind of inform next steps for us, okay? So this, like we said, we've got workshops that are all group, right? And so the more